out of New York, and the Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. has reportedly convened a grand jury in his wide-ranging investigation into former President Donald Trump and his organization. Right now, we're going to bring in a reporter who's been working on this story from the Washington Post. We're being joined right now by Jonathan O'Connell. Jonathan, thank you so much. Huge development today. This means that, a grand jury will be potentially looking at evidence, potentially seeking indictments. What exactly is the probe looking into, though?
Well, they haven't provided a whole lot of evidence publicly yet. But we sort of know two categories that they're interested in. One is, obviously, President Trump's real estate company has been under scrutiny before for the way they evaluate their properties and how they pay taxes on them. So if there's any problems with the way that the company has expressed the value of their property to tax appraisers versus banks, they could potentially be a problem there. The other thing that we know that investigators have looked at is the CFO of the company, Alan Weisselberg, who's been there for many years, very close confidant of of President Trump and his family. He's kind of the most trusted executive at the Trump company that is not a Trump family member. And investigators have been looking at whether Mr. Weisselberg has properly been paying taxes or not, and whether there's a problem there.
And Jonathan, this comes in light of the recent news just last week that we also found out from, I believe, the New York Times reporting that the New York State Attorney General, Letitia James, is also pursuing these lines of inquiry in a criminal capacity now, and that the DA has solicited the help of some of her, deputy attorneys general. What do you see in this story going forward at this point?
That's a good question. You're right, Andrew. Letitia James, the New York AG, has been really investigating Trump for a couple of years now. And President Trump obviously had some protections that he enjoyed while he was in office that he does not enjoy now, in terms of, he could have the Justice Department defend him on a lot of these cases. He had legal protections afforded to him because he was the acting president of the United States. So he's defending himself now privately. It's difficult to say really what they have. I mean, Mr. Trump, does not use email. He's obviously been under scrutiny from other legal entities before and has never, he's had to pay fines, et cetera, but he's never really been, in trouble in terms of a criminal situation. So I certainly understand some skepticism that this will be the time that he gets hung up. On the other hand, the DA wouldn't be convening this grand jury if he did not think that he had some good evidence. And we don't know what that evidence is yet, is the only thing.
Yeah, because this would be quite stunning in the event that a former president would be indicted on state charges in New York. And so I want to bring up, too, because speaking of the Manhattan DA, Cyrus Vance, choosing not to seek re-election. And so does that call into question kind of the future of the investigation itself?
I mean, I do think that whoever replaces Vance will probably be the one to carry this through if there's a real case to be had and if there's a trial, of course. I mean, but partly here, we also don't know. I mean, obviously there's interest in targeting Mr. Trump or President Trump, but there also could be charges against his company. There could just be charges against Mr. Weisselberg or another executive. We also know that there's been some effort to look at the activities of Mr. Weisselberg's two grown sons, one of whom has been working for Trump's company for many years also. So, there's an effort afoot here to see if Mr. Weisselberg has potentially some legal liability. Would he ever turn against Mr. Trump? Because there's pretty broad understanding, I think, agreement that Mr. Weisselberg was trusted with everything the company did. Former Trump attorney Michael Cohen has talked, quite a bit about that. And I don't think that's a question. The question is whether Mr. Weisselberg is in any kind of trouble, and if he is, how he would act or respond to that.
Yeah, Jonathan, that's definitely one of the major things that we're looking at as well. What will be Alan Weisselberg's role in this if he does decide to cooperate? We know prosecutors did subpoena, I believe, some financial records having to do with his grandchildren's private school tuition there in Manhattan.
That's right.
But this investigation has been going on, for some time. While the president was President Trump, we know Cyrus Vance went to great lengths to get access to about, I believe, 8 years of the former president's tax records. How does that play into this?
That's a good question. I actually think in some ways the importance of Trump's tax returns is a little bit overblown, and in other instances maybe it isn't. I mean, for instance, Letitia James, the AG, has made clear in court filings that she's interested in a number of Trump's properties: the Severn Springs estate, his hotel in Chicago, his golf course in Los Angeles. And what she specifically has indicated that she is interested in is the way that Trump received, in some cases, tax easements on those properties that allowed him to save tremendously on his property tax bill. Now, there's one thing to pay not enough taxes, and maybe you can get in trouble with that and have to pay more, or maybe pay a fine or something. It's quite another thing if somebody finds evidence that that someone knowingly tries to avoid paying taxes and knows that they should be paying more and does not, which is quite a higher bar than just making a mistake on your taxes. And as you mentioned, Cy Vance has been in this game for a long time. Obviously, his father had this job before he did. He's been in office a number of years now. Either he's going to put together a case in short order here before he leaves office and leave it to a successor, or probably will have to shut it down before he leaves. And, we won't know really that for a few months here.
And if that is the case, Jonathan, time would be running out. But want to get the former president's side to this all. He's been calling this just a political witch hunt from the get-go. He and his allies and advocates think this is just grossly unfair. And so we'll be following his reaction to this news today. I don't know if I have not seen anything just yet. Has he responded to this yet?
Not today, but he has spoken about these inquiries a number of times. I mean, he and members of his family have pointed out that Letitia James, even before she was in office, was talking about how she was going to bring down President Trump, how she was going to go after President Trump. And that sort of provided some evidence for his argument that this is political, that they wouldn't be going after him if he hadn't become president, if they didn't want him to become president again, and that this really has nothing to do with his business. And, in his defense, a lot of the activities that they're looking at right now, some of them are more recent, but some of them are older. And, that does beg the question, well, why are they going after his company now if they didn't go after it when he was running it on a day-to-day basis?
All right, Jonathan O'Connell from the Washington Post. We'll leave it at that. Great question. Thanks for your reporting on this story and bringing it to our viewers here this afternoon. We'll see you again.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it.